there's no more breath left in my lungs, I will keep you safe.
In all your years when you had a missing person, did they ever turn up alive?
Never. But you know, the families always hold out hope. I can't imagine the frustration to always wonder when you walk around that next corner, are you gonna see that person that you miss so much that literally vanished from this earth?
Yeah. In July of 2012, a young single father traveled here to Shoshone County, Idaho to attend a family reunion, but he never showed up and he has never been seen again. The local district attorney has asked us to come here and help them try to figure out what happened to him.
I swear that I'll find you.
Brian Shookman was 32 years old. He was an outdoorsy kind of guy.
With a family who cares about him, a child that he was trying to connect with.
He's coming to town for his family reunion. He's going to get to see his son for the whole weekend.
Really unexpected that this would turn into the last time anybody saw him.
A few weeks after Brian Shookman's disappearance, his red 98 Ford Escort was found on a power line access road outside of town. Investigators conducted a search of the area, but found no sign of a struggle, blood, or his body.
So we had the idea that Brian got himself out there somehow, got confused, and to this day, his body's still out there somewhere.
Right.
We had those other people from that weekend that could have gotten upset with Brian over a girl, over drugs. They're pretty much all involved in meth. Brian was a recovering drug addict, and while he arrived here to see his family, it looks like he may have... Oh, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Jeff Lee.
Jeff, I'm Kelly.
Hey, I'm Abby.
Keisha, Austin,
I
Dunn.
just so happy to see you, girl.
Great to see you.
We've been out.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
How long have you been the DA?
Since 2012.
God dang, did you start when you were 10?
It's been 7 years since his disappearance, and everyone always thinks of Brian.
I'll be here all week, so
Don't worry, we're not letting you go.
Anything you need,
We aren't
just
letting
let
you
me
go,
know.
that's right.
I always approach my position by pushing investigations forward in the way that I would want a prosecutor to do if it were my family member that was missing.
Abby, you can't ask this because you're not rude, but I am. How the hell old are y'all?
28.
How old are you?
38.
Damn, y'all could be my kids.
What makes this case so personal is the fact that I grew up here for the most part. A lot of these members of the community, I know them personally. I don't want to see this happen to anybody, let alone my next door neighbor.
Brian Shookman, our sweet little victim who's 32 years old. He's a hunting, fishing kind of guy, right?
Yep.
He had some issues of drugs in the past. He had been sober, according to family members, for quite some time.
He had, at the time, a 6-year-old son.
His son lived with the son's mother in Washington, and his son was at the family reunion. So not only was Brian coming back to see other family members, but he also was coming back to see his son.
Do you want to run down your case to us? Brian comes to town for the family reunion, and what happens?
Brian was from Montana. He showed up around 5 o'clock in the morning on the day before the family gathering. He was staying with his cousin, Justin Smith. They used methamphetamine. Later on in the day, Justin's girlfriend, Christina, came over for a while. They wanted more drugs. They meet with Justin's source. They go back to Justin's residence to use the drugs. At some point in time, Christina left. Justin stated that Brian was acting paranoid, thinking that someone was chasing him. Brian takes off running into a total stranger's residence, saying people are chasing him and he need to call 911, which he did. The officer shows up, talks with Brian. Nobody was actually able to corroborate people chasing after him. Brian was the only one that was reporting that. And if he was using meth, I'm not sure what his state of mind was at that time. According to Justin, they went back to Justin's house and they went to bed. On the 28th, Saturday, Brian leaves, takes his drugs with him, but Brian did not show up to this family gathering. And that's when a lot of families started getting a little bit concerned.
Brian's family initially thought that he had driven back to Montana, maybe because he was embarrassed that he had relapsed into drug use. But then when he didn't even show up for work, they reported him missing.
Fast forward about a month, an individual finds a vehicle parked up on Dobson Pass on a remote Forest Service road. We had deputy go out there and confirm that the vehicle was a Ford Escort registered back to Brian Shookman.
While there was no sign of foul play and no trace of his body in the surrounding woods, detectives found 2 empty drink cans positioned in such a way that suggested there may have been 2 people in Brian's car. We sent swabs from the cans for DNA testing to determine who drank from them. Because if Brian wasn't alone, then it's possible his passenger was his killer.
Before we get to our suspects, how about we address the whole, it's not a murder. The explanation could simply be missing / accident / overdose.
It's been known that Brian's trying to get his drug problem eliminated, so his tolerance level may have been lowered, and then he comes here with guys that are using drugs all the time,
Ooh.
And he ends up overdosing because he thinks he can keep up.
And that's a big thing with meth, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Okay, under the accident category, it kind of all has to do with where the car is found. Because he could have really just driven out there high.
Trying to get away from somebody who's chasing
me, yeah.
And you drive the car until the point of, I can't go any further, and then I get out on foot.
Doesn't know how to get back and hurts himself.
It's possible that Brian just wandered off into the woods and fell victim to the elements. But if he thought he was fleeing pursuers, why not drive to a neighbor's house like he did the day before? Then again, maybe Brian wasn't responsible for his own disappearance. Justin is related to Brian as his cousin. What's he in for now?
Thefts.
Okay.
He is also a very violent person. Justin Smith had a documented battery against another gentleman that was dating Christina Corf.
Justin was extremely jealous over his girlfriend Christina, even months after they had broken up. According to reports, he allegedly beat a man with a baseball bat almost to death just for dating her.
Justin makes some statements that he started having some weird thoughts about Brian having some type of relationship with Christina. So he openly admits that they got in an argument with each other.
My cousin and I weren't getting along because as soon as I used the drugs, I started losing my mind. I was thinking that they were having conversations behind my back.
If Justin and Brian were high and Justin got jealous, it's possible that argument escalated to murder. And if it did, Justin would have needed help disposing of Brian's car and his body, and may have asked his girlfriend, Christina.
Next up, Christina Korf.
Christina Korf was actually married at the time when she was seeing Justin.
She actually had a good family. She with kids. She got in with some people that went down the drug path.
She's the last person to see Brian alive.
Last person to see Brian, question mark. Christina claims that on the day of Brian's disappearance, she drove past him when he was pulling away from Justin's house. And while that may be true, it's also possible she's making that up just to avoid suspicion.
Justin and Christina break up a week after, which is a huge point to me. Now she's trying to distance herself from Justin.
That'll be a good thing to ask her about.
Yeah.
How come all of a
Why?
sudden? This could be one of our hardest cases yet. We're gonna need to take a look at the crime scene and test DNA evidence to try and see if we can tell who drove Brian's car up that mountain. Hopefully after 7 years, witnesses and maybe even our suspects will be more willing to talk to help us solve the mystery of Brian's disappearance. All right, that's good, guys. Thank y'all.
Mother, Rebecca, and sister Jennifer are going to be meeting with us.
Okay.
I hope we can give them
Some kind of answer.
any kind of answer.
It's been 7 years since Brian never showed up for his family reunion, and it breaks your heart to think that every single day his family hopes that today might be the day they can find out what happened. We wanted to meet with you to kind of, first of all, answer any questions that you have. By the time we get all done, well,
Sorry.
it's okay. We're here to talk about your baby. What kind of little boy was Brian?
Loving.
Okay.
Full of piss and vinegar.
Really?
He was a daredevil. We lived on a big hill, and he was 4 years old, and he'd get on that little bike and down the hill as fast as
Barrel
he could.
down the hill.
Fishing was his main thing.
Okay.
Just really, really big heart. We were best friends. He
Okay.
was my guardian angel my whole life. Brian was 5 years older than me, and I was the baby, so he was the one that made all the mistakes and then explained to me why I shouldn't do the same thing. Him and his boy were extremely close. They were always outside fishing, catching squirrels, 2 peas in a pod, really.
When Brian first went missing, I never thought for a second that Justin would have done anything to hurt him. And then when I talked to the police, and she said drugs were involved.
Bad drugs.
Things happen.
I want to think that he had nothing to do with it, but in all the time since Brian's went missing, never to call and say, this is what really happened, and here's where we were, and I hope this helps.
We haven't had a service for my son because I wanted to wait until we found him. Now I have hope, and maybe we will get answers. I want to bring him home. I want to bring his body home so we can bury it. I
Okay.
don't want him laying somewhere.
Okay. This is a hard case, you know that.
Yeah.
His DA, Keisha, she's fired up, and the sheriff's department, they're fired up, so we're gonna try everything we can. I promise you. It feels like Brian's mom and sister believe that he's dead, and then you appreciate the fact that the people that would have the information to give him the answers are their own blood relatives. And she just wants to bury her baby. And if Brian was murdered, that puts more pressure on us to try and find out who did it and to get them to tell us where he is.
Is this Danielle Banning?
Yes, this is.
Brian Shookman never showed up for his family reunion in 2012, but his sister Danielle was there when their cousin Justin Smith showed up that day with his girlfriend Christina Korf. We want to know what she thinks about their possible involvement in Brian's disappearance.
At the picnic, my brother wasn't there. Later, Justin, my cousin, showed up, and his girlfriend looked like they were high on drugs. He was acting really weird, talking about how I can't believe your brother wouldn't show up for his own family reunion. Then he started walking around with me and the kids, trying to scare the kids, talking about killing somebody or a dead body out that way.
Justin's comments about killing somebody and a dead body on the day of Brian's disappearance is kind of odd. And it makes you wonder if it was just the drugs talking or if there was a reason murder was on his mind.
I believe that he did something to my brother. Brian would have been there, no matter what.
Hey boy, don't lie to me. Tell me where did you sleep last night?
This is the route that would take you to get up to where the vehicle was found.
Brian's car was found in the summer of 2012, parked at the end of an access service road. It was miles from Justin's house and the family reunion. The road is a turnoff from the main mountain pass and easily accessible during the summer. But right now, due to the snow, we can't access it. But we're headed up another mountain road to get a good look at it.
Second tower that you can see across there is
right there.
in front of that's where the car was
And you
sitting.
can see there's like a little road there.
A little ledge.
Okay. The crazy thing about this location is that 3 weeks after Brian went missing, Google Earth satellites captured an image of the mountain pass and with it an image of Brian's car just sitting there waiting to be discovered. The question is, was it abandoned there by Brian or dumped by his killer?
If you wanted to dispose of the vehicle, you could have pushed it or driven it and put it in drive and let it go off the edge, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
It would have been easy to push it into the trees.
What about this road right here?
If you wanted to go back to Montana.
This is the route you
This is
could
the
go to
second route
Montana.
to get to Montana.
Well, this location seems remote. It's along a route between Justin's house, where Brian was staying, and his home in Montana. So it's possible Brian decided to drive home and, for whatever reason, get out of his car, and he fell victim to a fatal accident. Or maybe somebody tried to make it look like that's what happened.
This changes the perspective for me a lot. This is not remote.
Okay, wow. I was hoping this mountain would give us a clearer view of what happened to Brian, but it feels like all we got was just a clearer view.
In the pines, where the sun don't ever shine. Tell me, where did you sleep last night?
Ooh, what we got here, guys?
A Ford Escort, very similar model to that of Brian Shookman's.
Although this scenario exists where Brian drove himself up the mountain, we want to examine a vehicle like Brian's to see if it suggests any evidence that one of our suspects could have driven the car. We've used crime scene photos and measurements to replicate the interior just like it was found.
The seats are in the position that we think they need to be. The energy drink cans positioned.
Why do you care about the position?
Anytime we're sitting in the driver's seat or a passenger seat of a vehicle, if we grab a drink, as soon as we set that drink back down, typically the mouth of the drink is facing toward the person that's drinking it.
If the driver was drinking both drinks, the next one would be facing the same direction.
But it wasn't, right?
It was facing the passenger seat.
Right.
The position of the energy drinks and the fact that there are two different brands suggest there may have been two people in Brian's vehicle. According to Justin and Christina, they were never in his car. So we sent the cans off for DNA testing to determine if they're possibly lying and just trying to distance themselves from his car.
The most important measurement is the base of the seat, how far that's going to be back, because that has to do with your size, your legs, all of those things.
The other thing we want to examine is the distance between the steering column and the driver's seat, because that could suggest the height of the driver, whether it was Brian or someone else. It's kind of like finding the Goldilocks position, which one fits just right.
How about we start with Brian, the victim?
Yep.
How tall was he?
He was about 5'8", so his size is relatively close to mine.
Okay. How you feeling?
Definitely not comfortable.
It looks to me like you're hitting the steering wheel with your legs. Would you drive it like that?
No.
You're not going to be all cramped up like that. No way.
Brian Shookman was 5'8", and while it's possible, it seems like it would be pretty uncomfortable for him to drive his car with the seat in that position.
I'm similar stature of Justin Smith, 6'1", so I'm going to be the best resemblance.
Whoa.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
I don't think you can even drive it.
No, it would be very difficult.
So the whole theory that Justin drove this car. Look at that.
I don't think that he would have been one to drive this car.
No way.
Brian's cousin Justin was even taller than him, and it doesn't seem possible he could have driven the car with the seat in that position.
So last is Christina.
I'm 5'4". How tall is Christina?
She is smaller.
5'2".
Yeah. That's your car. That's Kelly's seating position.
I mean, my
right there.
foot's right on it. This is perfect.
Yeah, that's a significant piece.
This isn't a perfect scientific study by any means, but if the car seat was left in that position while it was on the hill, we've only got one suspect who fits it just right.
This was somebody small driving this car to that spot. In our world, that only fits Christina.
Hey, Dustin, this is Sergeant Beliski, Shoshone County Sheriff's Office. We have some questions to talk to you about in reference to a case back in 2012.
Is this in relation to Brian?
It is, yes.
We've uncovered evidence suggesting that our suspect, Christina Korf, may have helped dispose of Brian Shookman's vehicle, and she could be the key to cracking this case.
You can just hop right up front with me.
Take a seat. This is Kelly. She's just gonna be sitting in on this
How are
with
you,
us.
sir?
Nice rig, man. Not too shabby, huh?
But before we confront her, we're tracking down everybody that we can find who might have information on her boyfriend at the time, Justin Smith. Because if Christina would have had anything to do with this, it probably would be because of her involvement with Justin.
Do you know who Justin Smith is?
Yeah, he's my best friend. I've known Justin since I was 5 years old.
How long had you known Justin for?
We worked together for a year and a half.
Justin was your roommate at one time?
He came and stayed with me for like 2 weeks. Justin came up to my house like a week or so after he went missing, and he was telling me about just leaving. He wanted to hitchhike out of here, and he was paranoid.
Justin just got weird.
He just kept on like staring up at the stars saying, dude, there's just something I've done. God won't talk to me anymore. I can't hear his voice. He just can't forgive me for whatever I've done. He was way off his rocker.
He started saying a lot of stuff about that. He wanted to get something off his mind. I just kept on, I didn't want to know about it because I didn't want to have to look over my shoulder.
It sure sounds like Justin was feeling guilty after Brian's disappearance, but they were close. So if Justin was involved, what would have been the motive?
He just accused everybody. Like, everybody was his girlfriend.
You talking about Christina?
Yeah.
What if one of his ladies is either getting hit on or hitting on somebody else? What would Justin do?
He would flip it out. He would.
But you think Justin went out of control because why?
Of jealousy and anger. He's all messed up on meth.
What's the most you've seen him do when he's really, really
Oh, I
mad?
seen him fight. He ain't afraid to stomp on somebody's head. Blood ain't gonna intimidate him. A bone breaker ain't gonna stop him. He'll fly off the handle. He hears voices. I mean, he's nuts.
I mean, if anybody wanted to hide a body around here, it wouldn't be hard.
He just kept saying things about how his body was up where the car was. You could tell he had something to get off his mind.
Okay.
Something was really eating him up. The more spud he got, the worse it got.
Okay.
These witnesses paint a vivid portrait of Justin as a frightening, violent individual with intense jealousy over his girlfriend. We don't know if anything romantic occurred between Brian and Christina, but even if Justin thought it did, it might have driven him to murder.
Was there anything directly from Justin where he had talked about his cousin?
Yeah, Justin's saying that Danny Tetral and Sean Baird killed his cousin for drugs.
The Sheriff's Department has heard the name Danny Tetrot and Sean Bear before. They were the drug dealers who sold Justin the meth that he purchased for him and Brian. Justin told local law that Brian never actually met them. And since the drug deal happened the day before, at the time the Sheriff's Department didn't question it, but is it possible that Justin left a big part out of the story?
Do you think Danny or Sean Bear would do something to Justin if they found out that he said something?
I could see how he would think that, yeah.
Justin's a drug user and may have been making up stories. But if his dealers had anything to do with Brian's disappearance, we need to know.
I'm Jeff Lee, detective with the County Sheriff's Office. This is my partner,
My name's
Abby.
Andy. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
I wanted to see if you can help me out with some information.
Our next witness was in Danny and Sean's world at that time and may have heard something about their possible involvement.
So what do you know about Brian Shookman?
I heard that Danny and Justin, they were gonna rob Brian for his dope, and the gun went off and Brian got shot. I don't know which, if it was him or Justin.
Has Danny ever
You
said
know what I
anything
mean? But
about
I didn't.
that to you?
No, never. He has adamantly denied. But I heard that Danny was supposed to move the body, and that he didn't think that he had hidden him well enough or something, or I don't know. But he wanted to move it again, and he called Sean Bear, and that Sean helped him move it the second time.
This is a news story and a second witness to put Danny and Sean in the middle of Brian's disappearance.
I just feel like in my gut, those guys know.
It sounds like we may need to take a harder look at them.
So what did you think about what she had to say? Had you heard that before? About the robbery?
Weird. Well, it could have been that next day, the 28th on Saturday.
See, that's what I'm thinking. It would have been the 28th.
We initially thought a possible motive for Brian's murder was Justin's jealousy over his girlfriend, Christina. But with drugs and money changing hands, we need to consider other motives may have been in play. And with them, 2 more names to investigate.
We'll be getting ready here to go over to the jail now and get with Danny and start the interview with him.
And we are heading up the river, up Highway 12 to meet with Mr. Bear.
Perfect. Sounds good. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Good luck, guys.
Good luck, and you're gonna need it. It's possible that 32-year-old Brian Shookman was responsible for his own disappearance back in 2012. But if he was murdered, now we've heard about 2 individuals that may have been involved. His cousin Justin's drug dealers, Danny Tetrault and Sean Bear. The connection between Danny and Sean is?
Sean would be Danny's drug dealer.
Okay. Sean gives it to Danny, who gives it
to Justin. Yep.
Okay. According to Justin, he, Brian, and Christina all drove separate cars to a local gas station to buy some drugs from his dealer, Danny. But because Danny didn't have enough drugs on him, they went to Danny's dealer, Sean's house. Danny's more violent. Is that right?
Sean would be more violent.
Okay. Both Sean and Danny have pretty violent reputations and the criminal records to back it up. Full of arrests for drugs, batteries, and assaults.
With a lot of cold cases, the reason you don't have an answer from these people is they're not going to volunteer it, but if somebody asks them, you got a chance to get it.
They're both currently incarcerated in separate prisons on unrelated charges, so our plan is to split up and confront them both at the same time.
Hey, Sean. I'm Jeff.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sean, I'm Abby.
Pardon me,
Nice to
Abby.
meet you, sir.
Hey, Danny, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Sergeant Beliski, Shoshone County Sheriff's Office. This is Kelly.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. If they were involved in Brian's disappearance, hopefully we can catch them in a lie incriminating themselves or each other.
So in 2012, there's a gentleman named Brian Shookman that disappeared. Let's go back to that time frame and try to recall to the best you can what you know.
I met Brian one time at Wallace Conoco.
Okay.
Justin Smith, his cousin. Justin and Christina pulled up, and then Justin's cousin pulled over on the far side. I passed through my window to Christina. She handed it to Justin. Justin handed it to his cousin. Cousin handed him the money. Him handed it to Christina. Christina handed me the money. I said, all right, thanks.
But this timeline says the day that Justin brings Brian by to buy the dough. You don't have any, so Justin and Christina then drive to Sean Bear's house to get the meth.
Do you remember during that time frame, would you go with them to go to Sean's?
No.
Why not?
Because I would never bring Justin there.
Why not?
Because Sean didn't like Justin.
Danny's admitting to the drug deal, but he's contradicting Justin's story about going to Sean's to get more drugs. So is Danny misremembering, or is he protecting Sean? And if he is, why?
Because of the character of Justin, I didn't want to be involved with him while I was involved with drugs. I think he's a psychopath. I think that if he could have come up on me and hurt me to get my drugs, he would have done it.
Did Danny and Justin ever come to your house together?
I think so. I think they might have all 3 been together.
You're talking Christina as well? Do you remember when that was?
It's all within a month or so at the same time. What I remember is that there was an 8 ball exchanged, and then it went to Brian.
And at any point in time, did you ever meet Brian Shookman?
I've never met Brian Shookman.
Sean's story seems to match Justin's, but he contradicted himself a bit, saying he didn't get involved with Justin and drugs and then admitting to dealing to him. Maybe in an attempt to appear helpful, Sean slipped out a little too much information.
We heard that a drug deal went bad and that Brian was inadvertently shot.
No.
Is there any reason you would protect Sean?
No. I mean, he's my best friend, and you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm
Sean,
getting at.
There's no way. No, Sean, I'm not going to do it. I've put my life on that. How well of friends are you with Danny?
I would say Danny's probably one of my best friends.
Would you lie to me right now for him?
I don't have to lie to you right now for him.
Does Danny have anything to do with Brian's disappearance?
Not to my knowledge.
I remember Justin talking about his cousin.
Mm-hmm.
He said his cousin was coming into town.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He starts talking about how if his cousin started trying to screw Christina, there was going to be problems. I think Justin got Christina with Brian and something happened.
I think Brian Shookman was Christina. And I think that her boyfriend at the time, he's off in the head, especially over women. And I think something might have happened.
Me and Christina started sleeping together, like not very long after that. Justin started getting weird. Doing
like
weird. Christine would call me, I'd go stay out of her house, and she'd say that he was stalking her. Like, he broke into her house and pissed on her bed one night. She had me so nervous and freaked out. I said, what are you so freaked out about? What do you think, he's gonna come in here and kill us or something? And she's like, I just know what he's capable of. And I'm like, what do you mean by that?
If he caught somebody his old lady in a fit of rage, I think he would kill them.
We're not entirely sure what to think because there might have been a few inconsistencies in Danny and Sean's stories, but they were very cooperative and volunteered to give us samples of their DNA. So maybe some DNA can help us.
All right, take care.
Okay, so as far as the things sent off for testing from the car itself and right around it, what are you still hopeful about? Since none of our suspects even admit to ever being in Brian's car, a positive DNA match might be just what we need to crack this case.
I'm still hopeful that we can have one other person that we can put in the vehicle, somebody that we know right now that said that they are not in that vehicle.
To shake up our story.
Exactly.
That would have changed the dynamic of everything.
Yep.
Okay, can you hear me, Jared?
I can hear you just fine.
We sent swabs from the energy drinks from Brian Chukman's abandoned car to the lab for DNA testing. It's time to get those results.
Hey, Chandra, I'm hoping you can give us some good results here.
Since all 4 of our persons of interest deny ever even being in Brian's car, the hope is that their DNA will come back on these cans, suggesting they were involved in disposing of it and maybe even in his disappearance.
All right, so we did actually get something that matched just your victim.
Okay.
He was on both the Rockstar and the Full Throttle. Both of those were his.
Dang.
Dang.
Okay. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. Our guess is that Brian drank those drinks on his drive out here from Montana, and if he was murdered, we have no physical evidence to prove that.
Shoot. That's the way it goes sometimes, man. Sometimes you strike out.
So I'm gonna have Christina try to recall the events herself first.
She's our last best hope, because she's in between the victim and our #1 suspect.
Yep.
We struck out on DNA, but we're not done yet, and we're not giving up. We still have 2 suspects to talk to. First up is Christina.
Christina, how are you?
Hi. Christina was the last person allegedly to have seen Brian alive, and according to our examination of his car, might have helped dispose of it.
I want to pick your brain and see what you can remember back from the 2012 timeframe.
Gosh, I don't remember a whole lot. I remember Brian because I remember going to Justin's house and Brian was there, and that's where I met him. And they were fighting about something, and then I ended up leaving because we weren't getting along either.
What were they arguing about?
I don't remember.
Is it over meth? Is it over a girl? Is it over you?
I don't know. No, it wasn't over me.
Just arguing? Did they do any scuffling or something like that?
No.
Just arguing?
Yeah, I ended up going up to Justin's the next day. I thought I saw Brian driving. I was going there. He was leaving. That's the last time I ever saw him.
Do you think that Brian was still high?
Oh, I don't know. I never seen him do anything, and I don't know.
Okay. What do you mean you never saw him do
I've never seen him do drugs, and I didn't, that wasn't our,
We're getting statements from back then that there was plenty of drug use going on between the 3 of you. Okay.
Oh, really? Well, maybe there might have, like I said, it's been a long time, I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
Maybe I remember smoking a little bit with them, actually.
Okay. Christina seems visibly uncomfortable. She's breaking eye contact, she's stammering, but is she just nervous about answering questions about her drug use, or is she trying to hide something else? When you first show up at Justin's house, after you think you see Brian and you wave, what was Justin doing? How was he acting?
I really don't remember.
Do you remember?
I remember only being there for about 15 minutes, I think it was.
You don't remember going to Justin's family reunion?
No, I didn't go.
You didn't go?
No, I don't think I was invited. I don't remember.
You're in the photos at their family reunion.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not in the photos because I was not there.
Okay, Christina, and the answer could simply be that you were high and don't remember the family reunion. But we're telling you, you're in the picture and people saw you there.
I was not there. I want to see the pictures because I was not there.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
It seems odd that Christina wouldn't remember going to Brian and Justin's family reunion. So why would she lie about that? Why'd y'all break up?
I don't remember.
Did you leave Justin because you were afraid that Justin did something to Brian?
No.
Have you ever thought that?
Well, now I do. But back then, I didn't really think that.
Brian's mom, she just wants to bury her son's bones.
I really don't know where he could be. I'm sorry that I don't know.
Interviewing Christina is frustrating because she has all these reasons to lie in her mind that we don't even care about. She doesn't want to look like a bad mother. She doesn't want to admit the amount of meth she used back then. We're never going to know why she's lying about what she's lying about.
It's just so frustrating.
The nice thing with talking with Justin is we know he's going to be sober.
Yes, agreed.
That was an issue for law enforcement in the past.
We've got one last suspect to interview, Brian's cousin, Justin Smith, who's currently in prison for grand theft auto and a burglary. It's always tricky interviewing a suspect related to your victim because they can tailor their story based on intimate knowledge of the victim's behavior.
Hey, Justin, I'm Jeff.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
And at this point, if Justin did kill Brian, we'll need a confession to prove it.
The reason I wanted to come and talk to you is about something that happened in 2012.
My cousin?
Yeah.
It's been 7 years. What I remember is probably not going to be the what I said before, and then you guys will be like, "Oh, he's got different stories now. We're going to get him."
Well, so we totally understand that there's time that's passed. You know what I'm saying? And I get that.
Last time I see my cousin, he left my house. He was going to meet me in Mullen. I never saw him again.
Do you kind of remember the Friday when he showed up?
Well, it's pretty hard to forget. You know, your cousin don't go missing very often in your life. You know.
Yeah.
He showed up early in the morning. Christina came over. We went to Wallace and got some dope. Danny had almost an 8-ball on him, but he wasn't in a full 8-ball. So I was like, "No, we want a full 8-ball." So we went up to Sean's and got a full 8-ball.
Was Brian with you guys when you picked that up?
He was following us in the car.
Okay, so Danny and Sean both met Brian then?
No, neither one of them met Brian.
Oh, okay. What about your relationship with Christina at that time?
It was rocky.
Anything between you and Christina going on while Brian's staying with you?
I don't know. I thought they were giving each other weird looks and stuff, but that was probably just the dope talking.
Okay. Did you ever, talk to Brian about that?
Probably. I probably said something to him. He was trying to help my old lady or something. I don't remember exactly.
You guys didn't get into an argument?
Pretty sure we did. We just hung out for an hour or 2 or 3, and then we went back to my place. We go to bed, and I wake up, I get my cousin up, and we got ready to go to a big barbecue. My cousin left, figured he went back to Montana and just didn't tell me or something, you know what I mean? I didn't think he drove out to the woods and parked his car and did something. He took off running or whatever he did out there, you know?
Do you ever remember mentioning about how God is going to be upset with you because you're a bad person or something like that?
No, absolutely not.
If you had something to do with Brian's disappearance, would you tell me?
I would tell you. I wouldn't let my aunt wonder. I wouldn't let everybody wonder. No, I don't know what happened to him. I just want to help find my cousin.
Okay.
Kelly, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Justin Smith, for a guy that's been doing meth for all these years, has an incredibly accurate memory. He admits to being crazy back then. He kept saying that the meth was doing the talking.
Damn.
It's hard to fabricate a lie twice.
And be consistent. You know, he was consistent before too. But he's also not stupid. He's just crazy and weird.
It's very frustrating because you see Brian's mom in the back of your mind. She's sitting at home right now hoping that we're finding out information that gives her more answers. And that's not what's happening. And I don't think that having to go to her and give her no news or bad news is anything that any of us want to do. And right now, that's the road we're on.
We're not figuring this one out.
We've examined all the evidence, talked to all the witnesses and all of our suspects, and it's time for us to figure out where this case stands today.
Okay, so what do you think about Daniel Tetrault and Sean Bear?
He was selling dope at the time, and they bought dope. So other than that, there's nothing that ties him directly to Brian.
Danny Tetrault and Sean Bear were rumored to have been involved in Brian's disappearance. They might have bad reputations as dealers, but there is no evidence to suggest that they are killers.
Let's go to Christina. Figuring out what to do with Christina Korb is a microcosm of this entire case.
Christina's memory is suspect, and she seems to be the right size to have driven Brian's car to the mountain.
This is perfect.
Yeah.
But we can't be sure that someone didn't happen upon the car, sitting on the mountain, somebody didn't mess with the seats, or during the collecting of the car, the seat wasn't adjusted.
Her story and all of these other things, it would be hard to clear her out, but how do we put her in other than she dated the missing person's cousin?
Unfortunately, at this point, the Sheriff's Department is not able to definitively rule out the possibility that Christina played a role in all of this.
What do y'all think about Justin Smith?
His story was almost the exact same as his initial interview.
I don't even know if I really think he did it, but I don't think you can take him off the board.
I can't rule him out.
You can't wipe him off the board because a lot of what's up there is true.
Yeah.
But all of that unusual behavior is no different than Brian Shookman's unusual behavior because they're both blown out of their minds on meth.
The saddest part about all this is that ultimately, without a body, it feels like there's still a possibility that Brian was